Hello and welcome to this newest video. Today I'm going to be discussing another AI related topic and its uses for law students or attorneys. Today I'm going to be looking at a use I found where you're able to take multiple different filings, pleadings, different cases, and sort of put them all in the same AI, and you're able to ask questions about the topic at large. And so here for myself, I'm writing for my school's journal, and I have chosen to write a 40-page paper about detransition or litigation because it is so new and because I think we are at the very beginnings of it and it's only going to grow from here. So what I've done is I've gone ahead and I've pulled, let's see, yeah, just a handful of cases. And I've also pulled the website of Campbell Miller Payne, which is a law firm dedicated to detransition or litigation. And so some of these cases are their own, but I also have a couple that are not their cases. And I was really impressed with what the AI was able to do for me in getting an understanding of all these cases without having to spend, multiple hours reading through them, reading through their filings and what it is they're alleging. I'm able to get a much quicker picture, and that's going to help me be more efficient, know which cases I want to look into. And so I want to show you how I did that. And so that way other law students or attorneys who might have a use for this can do so. It's really fun, and I recommend you watch my last three videos where I'm using Notebook LM. This is probably going to be the last video where I talk about Notebook LM, but because maybe it's getting stale. But anyway, in each one of these, I've talked about a different use case scenario, and I think it's really fascinating. But more specifically, the most recent one I would recommend because I talk more about detransition or litigation as the example for client intake and how this is going to revolutionize client intake. And so this will kind of be the point of reference common amongst the two videos. All right, so with that being said, let's go ahead and get into it. I'm going to share my screen. There we go. And there you go. All right. So what we're looking at here is the Notebook LM, and here you upload your sources. And for myself, I went ahead, chose a file, and I can go to desktop, detransitioner cases. These are the Campbell Miller Payne cases. I have five of which, and then I have two non-Campbell Miller Payne cases. And so I went ahead and I uploaded all these, and I, got the summary. There was also some things I asked it, if I'm not mistaken. Yeah, so I asked it, in an attorney's world, timelines can be really helpful, especially a PI or criminal law firm. So yeah, create a timeline of these, simple tasks. Create a timeline of the filings for these cases and include the data when the plaintiff began their transition and the date they quit their transition, if it is mentioned. And so this is already going to allow me to see which cases might be worth my time if I'm interested in talking about cases where the transition happened when the individual was a minor, and so maybe that, causes that is different. That's a different legal analysis than if they were an adult. So anyway, we'll get into that. So Mosley versus Emerson. This case was filed in 2023 and began their transition at the age of 17 in 2015. Doesn't mention detransition date in the document. All right, the Heinemann case. This is an individual who began to regret their transition the week after they received their top surgery, which was in March of 2022. And let's see, they began their transition 3 weeks after their 18th birthday. All right, Ullery versus Rafferty. This filing date for this case is not included in the document. I find that hard to believe, so maybe I'd want to check that if it was important. Began their transition in August 29th, 2017, when they began taking testosterone. Uh, Failed her after hearing stories. Yeah, okay, so then Leighton realized that the defendants had failed her after hearing stories from other detransitioners. And I talked about this. This is probably, let's see. Yeah, this is a really cool thing. I've shown this in other videos. You can click the footnote and it'll take you to the relevant source, and then it will highlight in that relevant source the information that substantiates the claim that it made. So I think this is a really efficient way to go about your legal research. Yeah. So anyway, I won't bore you with going through the rest of them. Although I'll do one more. I'll do the Fenway case because I think that's interesting. I think this is the shapeshifter case. This case was filed on February 14th, 2024. This is the discrimination one, if I'm not mistaken. Julie began his transition in the summer of 2012, began taking hormones in January 2013, and publicly announced detransition in May of 2022. Interesting. All right, and so that's just one specific, use of it. That'd be creating the timeline. But I also have wording the shapeshifter. Yeah, that's a dumb question. This is one of the questions it recommended, and I didn't mean to click on it. But can you create a table for each case and list the alleged harms for each plaintiff in the second column and the plaintiff's name in the first column? In the first column, also include a description of the plaintiff, including things like their age, sex, when they started their transition, etc. So these are things that might be relevant if you're the attorney. And I kind of was, I didn't do this on purpose, but I realized afterwards these instructions were not great. I say create a table for each case. That's not really what I meant. But ultimately, AI is really good at taking, doing what you mean, not what you say. I love that. And so we got a pretty good table. This isn't how I pictured it in my head. I just pictured two columns and this would have gone under it. But you could easily prompt it a second time and say, hey, this is great, but I want you to combine the case column and the plaintiff column, and it would do just that. So it's really good. All right. And so here we get, again, if I'm, what cases are what I'm looking for, I have a better way of doing so. And, you can change this query to your needs. But yeah, so Mosley is a female over the age of 18, began their transition at the age of 17. Um, Christina Heineman is a female born in 2003, began their transition November 2021. 3 weeks after their birthday, realized it was a mistake. Actually, sorry, 3 weeks after 18th birthday, and then they realized it was a mistake the week after their top surgery. Sorry, I misspoke. Hannah Eulery. Anyway, you get the point. This could be an extremely useful tool, and so just really impressed with it. Here we have this column was all about the alleged harms. So let's go to the Fenway case, because this one, I believe, is the discrimination case. Alleges that the defendant's informed consent model contravenes the conceptual underpinnings of informed consent by failing to provide accurate and complete information material to decision making. He further alleges that the defendant failed to obtain his informed consent for the experimental affirmative therapy that was provided. He claims the defendant converted him from a gay man to transgender by affirming his internalized homophobia and viewing all of his psychological ailments through a transgender lens. Yeah, this is the basis of their very creative discrimination claim. It's that the doctor was discriminating against them for being a homosexual, and the discrimination manifested in their encouragement to transition them so that they would no longer be a homosexual man, but they would then be a heterosexual female. So interesting to see where that case will go. Um, Also alleges the defendant encouraged his transition despite the counter indications and less risky alternatives, and that his functioning declined as his condition worsened as a result. He claims he suffered irreparable physical and psychological injuries, as is the case with many of these plaintiffs, including the loss of certain organs, dysfunction, and cognitive decline. So anyway, that is just one example of a use for this. And then I'll end the video off by going back to the notebook guide, and I'll play you about a minute of this podcast I had to create. And so because I'm writing a 40-page paper on this detransition or litigation, trying to present it in a clear, straight to the point manner is something that can be hard to do. You don't really know where to start. I thought that the AI did an extremely good job. And I'll show you if it will let me. Dang, I don't think it will. Audio overview. Yeah, so before I click generate right here, there was another button that said customize. And so I was able to click on customize and tell it what I wanted it to focus on. And so one of the things I told it was like, I want you to focus on um, commonalities amongst all of these cases, trying to get it to look at the big picture. And it did a really amazing job. And I also asked it to talk about, the wrongdoing of healthcare providers that is alleged. And it did a great job at touching at that. And I said, like, do that last right before we lead into the recap. And so I was really amazed with how it was able to structure its response and even like just present the information in a compelling manner. So I'll go ahead and play a minute of that. I skipped the intro, even though it was really great. And you can just see what it is that we're dealing with and if this is something you wanted to do. And again, let's say like I sit in traffic for, an hour a day. If I'm an attorney, like that is a valuable hour of time that's being wasted. And, time is money. And so I could be, for example, the night before downloading a bunch of different things that I want to learn about, uploading them, getting a podcast created. And I think I haven't tested the full limits of like how long I could make the podcast. But worst case scenario, I could make, three different podcasts that are each 12 minutes. And that's pretty good too. And then here I can download it to my computer, send it to my phone, and now we're listening to it in the car while we're sitting in traffic, learning about this thing. So, all right, I'll go ahead and play a minute of this.
Young some of these individuals were when they started questioning their gender identity and seeking medical intervention.
Yeah, like how young are we talking?
Well, for instance, we have the case of Isabel Ayala, who was only 14 when she was prescribed testosterone.
Wow, 14.
And in the Hyman case, Christina was just 18 when she started testosterone therapy at Planned Parenthood. And these are big decisions with potentially lifelong impacts. So it really raises concerns about informed consent, especially with such young people.
That's really interesting that you bring up informed consent because that was something that I noticed as a common thread as well. A lot of these lawsuits alleged that they didn't receive like adequate information about the risks, the long-term effects, the potential for regret, all that. It seems like maybe that wasn't communicated effectively or at all.
Exactly. And that lack of comprehensive informed consent is a recurring theme in these cases. Like in the Ayala case, Isabel claims she wasn't properly informed about the irreversible effects of testosterone, things like permanent voice changes and facial hair growth, which.
So my face is not really conveying just how impressed I am with this. I think this is remarkable. Yeah, it's referencing these cases. It's giving a really great, it's doing a great job at delivering on the prompt that I asked it. So that was, focus on the commonalities, the big picture amongst all these cases and throughout all these cases. And one of those is informed consent. And I'm planning on doing a meaningful amount of my research and writing for my paper on that problem. And here I am, I'm able to kind of see what cases go into that more than others, maybe, and just kind of get an explanation of what it is my research is going to be showing me, as I start looking at the legal standards for informed consent. So really fascinating. I hope law students and attorneys take advantage of these tools. I can only imagine that they'll get better, or maybe they'll start to get paywalled off. But yeah, really awesome. If you aren't using it, you should start playing around with it. And the applications for this are really anything you can imagine. So yeah, I hope you found this video helpful. Feel free to go ahead and subscribe if you want to see more of this type of content, and stay tuned.